Hello and happy Tuesday, and welcome to another episode of the Investor Guys podcast. Mr. Barnett, how you doing today? You are looking very snappy, by the way. I noticed
Well, thank you.
when you first got on before we went live, when you're putting on the jacket. At first glance, I mentioned that it looked like a referee shirt, but now with the brown jacket, I can see the brown stripes. It looks very, very good, very coordinated.
Thank
very,
you.
very
Thank
nice.
you.
So
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Doing incredibly well.
looking snappy.
Got my middle son off to OU this past weekend. He got moved in, so that was incredible. Yeah, so very excited for him since he didn't have to. He's a sophomore. Last year, he did not get a freshman year because it was. I told him, I said, you were really in grade 13 last year because it was all online. And he was like, this is not what I expected college to be like. And I said, well, now you're at a college. You're at a fun college. You're a month away from football season. It's going to be, well, right now, I guess we're 2-3 weeks away. I said, it's going to be amazing. You're going to have a blast. It is so cool. I'm very excited for you.
And OU is very much a football school.
So. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yep. So what is on the agenda for today, sir?
You know, you had mentioned that you had read a Forbes magazine article over the weekend regarding investments. And let's talk about that because, you know, no matter what anybody wants to say, as far as politics or just the natural flow of things or anything else, our economy is in flux, without a doubt.
Sure.
You look at the numbers, you'd have to be a moron to say that something is not going on with our economy. Whether you want to predict it's going to be, you know, a depression or a recession or anything else, that's up to your own individual interpretation of it. But nobody can look at our economy, look at the numbers, look at what they paid for gas a year ago, look at what they paid for eggs and milk a year ago. Look at the availability of just the food that you can purchase in the grocery store. I love making hot wings. And most of the times I can't even find wings and drumettes in the grocery store because there is a shortage of chicken because of the chicken processors. It is just absolutely insane. I found some the other day and I used to get a bag. It was like a 4-pound bag. It was like $8 or $9. It was $30. You know, for a 4-pound bag of chicken wings, you know, to make, not even made already. That kind of insanity has to make you look at the economy and say, what is going on and where am I going to be able to invest? What am I going to be able to do to safeguard my money, safeguard my investment, and hopefully still make money? And where's the market going? Am I going to get into something that is great now that a year or two later isn't going to be? And that's a very real concern for a lot of people.
Sure.
So let's talk about what that Forbes article said, because you said it had some, you said you agreed with it and you disagreed with it. So let's start with what it had to say and then tell us why you agreed and why you disagreed with it.
You bet. First of all, let me give credit to who wrote it. And it doesn't give the guy's name. I'm sure it did somewhere, but he's the VP of Investor Relations at Barron Capital. And so the article is 6 ways to make well-founded investments in a shaky economy. And so each of the subtopics I basically agreed with. When you get into it, his take on the subtitle and my take were very different, but I agree with the subtitles for the most part. First one is do your due diligence. Do your due diligence. And absolutely, you and I both, from day one, anytime we talk to investors, when we're getting into making an offer, it's, you know, have you done your due diligence? Because that's where it starts. And the due diligence in our world starts with knowing your numbers. If you know your numbers, then the due diligence gets significantly easier to do. So you got to know your numbers. His deal was, let's see if there's, I'm not even going to get into stuff, but really that's what it is. It's knowing your numbers. And when you look at, if you're doing rental property, the reason that Kevin and I focus on Section 8, and Kevin is the reason that I focus on Section 8. I had been in Section 8 years ago and had gotten away from it, and I didn't purposely leave. It just kind of fell by the wayside, and I was so into flips. I still am, but Section 8 has really changed, and you are kidding yourself about seriously building wealth in real estate if you're not considering Section 8 as a part. It doesn't have to be your whole portfolio, but you should have it as a part of your portfolio so that if the insanity continues, and there's no reason to believe yet that it's not going to, with our government, that when the next lockdown happens, and look, if we don't clean DC out, there will be another lockdown. And they're already talking about the variant. I've heard the name of it, that after the Delta variant, they're like, oh, this is the worst thing yet. I'm like,
The Lambda variant coming out of Latin America.
Yeah, it's these people make me want to puke. So sorry, getting off on political rant there. So what happens when this variant comes in? And this is, I'm going to say one more thing. This is about nothing but making sure that America stays in constant fear so they can control us, and so that when the midterms come up, they can go after mail-in votes again and can cheat unashamedly, just like they did in 2020. Now, we get into lockdown, because that will be what happens. There will be another lockdown if we don't clean house, and clean Senate too, but that's not a phrase. So if we don't clean house, then there's going to be another lockdown. And when there's another lockdown, what are you going to be doing with your real estate investment? Now, we're up on a break, so I want to tell you how this fits into what you're going to, or what you could do, what you and I'll be doing, what everyone that's listening could be doing if they plan appropriately, so that it doesn't just rip your heart out from your economic heart out of you if the next lockdown happens. So we'll be right back after this with more Investor Guys podcast.
See you in 11 months out of the year, Bill and I host real estate buyers events in cities like Cleveland, Ohio, where we ourselves invest and see great returns. We show investors the types of strategies we're using, the types of properties we're using. We introduce them to people here on the ground and the resources that they can use to get started right away. Day 4 of this event, we're actually touring properties and making offers on properties. This event was designed to put properties in your portfolio right away, high-performing properties. Read more about the Real Estate Buyers event. Get registered. We'll see you at the next event, realestatebuyersevent.com. A lot of real estate training programs claim that they will make you a millionaire, but how many of them will guarantee it? The Millionaire Blueprint comes with a millionaire guarantee. I guarantee that if you use the strategies and you use the formulas that you learn in the Millionaire Blueprint, you will be a millionaire. I guarantee that with a double your money back guarantee. Whether you have hundreds of thousands of dollars to invest or absolutely nothing, it doesn't matter. I'm going to show you how to start investing and be a millionaire guaranteed. Now, I can't tell you all about it in this short amount of time, so go to the guaranteedmillionaireblueprint.com. That's the guaranteedmillionaireblueprint.com. Watch the videos there. Read about the guarantee. Read more about what we offer with the Millionaire Blueprint. Get signed up. I'll see you in Palm Beach. And we're back. And just before the break, we were talking about Section 8. And
Yep.
Really quick, I mean, we've talked about this before. The reason that you have more stability and a better guarantee on your income on Section 8 is because Uncle Sam pays the bills. It was funny because I saw a thread on Facebook the other day, and they were complaining about how the rent moratoriums had been extended. And it was people who were not real estate investors. And one person was saying, how is that fair? And another person said, well, it only applies to government housing. And I'm like, no, 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 no. It does not
It doesn't apply to
government housing.
all. Yeah.
It applies to everything but government housing. Us Section 8 landlords are still getting paid. We're still getting our paycheck from Uncle Sam. There's no rent moratorium for most Section 8 tenants. The government is paying their rent. Okay.
Yep.
They may pay a small portion of their voucher, or they may pay none of their voucher at all, but the government is paying their rent. The government isn't putting a moratorium on themselves paying Section 8 and FHA, and they're not,
Yeah.
they're putting a moratorium on people, normal people, paying their rent to normal landlords. I got one more thing, and I don't want to get into a political rant either, but we have people staying at home, not working, not going out and finding jobs because they are making more money on unemployment than they were working a job. And yet they can't pay rent. They're making more, let that sink in. They're making more money collecting unemployment. They're making more money getting pandemic relief than they were working a regular job where they would have had to have paid their rent.
Yeah.
And now that they're making more money, they don't have to pay their rent. There's a rent moratorium. And unfortunately, the way this works is if a landlord wants to get reimbursed for that rent, they can. However, they're not going to get reimbursed for that rent unless the tenant applies for the relief. So there are plenty of landlords out there who would like to get the money, but unless the tenant applies for the relief, the landlord cannot submit for relief. There's paperwork that the landlord submits after the tenant submits their paperwork for rental reimbursement. I don't know if you've had to go through this yet or not, Bill, but until the tenant actually applies for the rental relief, the landlord can't do anything. So the landlord is sitting dead in the water with billions. I had the number down the other day. It was like $24 billion in unpaid rent as of before Biden extended the moratorium.
I just used it again this weekend in a consulting session. It's 54 billion.
Yeah. So, well, this
That's
is before
the most recent number.
This was before he extended the rent moratorium, and the numbers probably hadn't caught up. But yeah, it's absolutely insane. I have it written down somewhere on my messy desk because I do a number of different shows. It's just back to Section 8.
Yeah, and
get paid by the government. If Uncle Sam stops paying his bills, we're in a lot of trouble. We should be packing our bags and catching not the last flight out of here, the earliest flight we can to someplace else. So
part of this is the government wants all of us dependent on the government. This is one of the few ways that we can actually be dependent on the government and it be really to not only our benefit, but to others' benefit, because Section 8, as we had covered in an earlier show, is so poorly served from the amount of property available. We all know that property is tight everywhere right now, except for the fact that in Section 8, it is just shocking for your state and my state. For every 10 families that are qualified for Section 8, there are 3 properties for them to choose from. There's a 70% shortage of Section 8 housing in Florida and in Texas and in California. And no state is any better than having a 39% shortage. So, and that doesn't have anything to do with pandemic or anything. That just has to do with the supply and demand, which was there before all this stuff happened. So do your due diligence, know your numbers. What Kevin and I look at and the things that we focus on, and it's been easier for me because of the fact that in rebuilding during this time, the Section 8 portfolio, I've been able to go with the tenants who have vouchers large enough to cover 100% of the rent. So they don't have to have a 100% voucher. It just means that the voucher that they have happens to be enough to cover our property. And when you do that, now I don't have to be one in the money collection business at all, but also now if there's a moratorium, again, doesn't affect me because the federal government pays their Section 8 property. And that's why Kevin and I preach to you all the time, not only about Section 8, but understanding who your tenant is. And that's part of your due diligence, understanding who your tenant is. Your tenant's the federal government. It is not the people that move into the property. All right, so that was number one. Number two, which just ties right in, great segue, look for assets that perform well during tough times. Well, you can't find a tougher time than what America is going through right now. There hasn't been, there might be somebody out there old enough that they lived through the Depression as a small child, but you'd have to go back to the Depression to find economic craziness like it's going on right now. Although, so this is for all of us, the likelihood is you've never seen or lived through tough times like they are right now. We just went through why Section 8 performs so well during tough times, because we have the one entity that if they get into a position where they can't pay their rent, well, then we're all in trouble in a very different way. Not that we're all not in trouble already. So look for assets that perform well during tough times. So I agree with it completely. I take a completely different take on it than the author did, but from a subchapter title, absolutely 100% agree with that.
And we can
break.
We can, but I want to expand on that really, really quick, because not just Section 8, okay, that's a strategy, okay, but as an asset, real estate does perform, okay. Now we most of you who are going to be watching this show are going to remember back to 2006, 2007, 2008, when we had the mortgage meltdown. Now, there were a lot of people, a lot of investors who this didn't affect because they did it by the numbers. They purchased real estate and they purchased it, and their strategies were by the numbers. The 2007, 2008, it did not affect me at all. Many of my students called constantly saying, you know what? It's amazing. We did this by the numbers and it's working perfect. I'm so glad I took your course. And I had so many people who called out of desperation because we also had a mortgage company at the time. And I also had, we were also doing loan modifications at the time. People calling out of desperation because they were losing their property. They're losing their home because they had not done it by the numbers. They had not done what they were supposed to do. They had not done their due diligence. Real estate is a tangible asset. Now, in many markets, now I lived in California. Many areas took a hit. Where I lived in South Orange County at the time, it didn't. Real estate stayed the same. You can see that line actually go up a little bit throughout 2007, 2008. Houses still got repossessed in Orange County, but it didn't affect the market. In Texas, where Bill is, you can barely see a little wiggle in the line if you're looking at 2007, 2008. Many other markets were hit really hard. Now, something interesting before we go on to break, the Section 8 markets where I invest, primarily Cleveland, Syracuse, Rochester, and Buffalo, okay? The properties that I was buying in those markets, the prices pretty much did not change at all. Same values throughout 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I'll tell you honestly, I've seen the values spike a little bit by a few $1,000s in the past year or two, but what I was paying 10 years ago to what I'm paying now is not that significantly different because of the value of the properties that we start with to begin with. We're talking about properties that we're acquiring for under $100,000 to start with. So not a significant price spike. I mean, these things can go up 10 and 20%, and we're still talking about, $5,000, $10,000. We are on a break though, and going over, we'll be back in a minute. Hi, my name's Kevin Mills. I have a real estate training program that is so powerful, I will back it up with a double your money back guarantee that it will make you a millionaire. That's right. Double your money back guarantee that you will be a millionaire if you use what you learn in the Millionaire Blueprint. I call it the Guaranteed Millionaire Blueprint, and you can read more about it and watch more videos at guaranteedmillionaireblueprint.com. That's guaranteedmillionaireblueprint.com. Check it out. All the information is there. Once a month, with the exception of December, Bill and I go to markets where we have experience and we host a real estate buyers event. These are markets that have great return potential for your real estate portfolio. We're going to show you the properties that we buy. We're going to show you where to buy, where not to buy, the strategies to use to make great income from these properties. We're also going to show you resources and individuals here on the ground that you can use to start building your team so that you can repeat this process over and over. The real estate buyers events are designed to put high performing properties in your portfolio right away. If you're interested in hearing more about the real estate buyers event, realestatebuyersevent.com. That's realestatebuyersevent.com. Read more about the events, check out the schedule, and register. We'll see you there. So before break, we were talking about the value of real estate as an asset to invest in, but our focus was on investing in an asset that is going to continue to perform well throughout the market that we're in. And one of the things that is, you cannot argue with guaranteed rent. No matter what, you can't argue with guaranteed rent. And I don't honestly know, other than states like Florida, where you can actually require an entire or request and get an entire month's worth of rent in it, or sorry, entire year's worth of rent in advance. Okay. Some states you can't charge more than the current month rent. In Florida, they can actually request a year rent in advance, paid in advance. Other than that, I can't think of guaranteed rent applying anywhere else other than in a Section 8 situation.
Right. So that was topic number 3. Look for assets that perform well during tough times. Point number 4 was consider an asset that has multiple layers of value. So what we look at when we're going through the numbers, and you hear Kevin and I talk about this constantly. When we're doing a rental portfolio, minimum, bar none, cut the line. If it's 0.1% below this, no. 40% cash on cash, minimum. And when you get in there, you're going to see, oh, I can get 55, I can get 70, I can get 90, I can get over 100, depending on the property. Then people start to go, oh, holy cow. But it's for those of you that have never experienced that, 40%, a lot of times it's hard to look at that and go, well, that's not realistic. Well, once you get in and start working with us and you start to see, wow, 40% not only is realistic, it's common. Now we see why they say if you're not there, don't even consider it. And then you'll bump up from there very easy. So multiple layers of wealth. So you get a great cash on cash return. You get net cash flow from the property. But the other thing that happens with rental, whether it's Section 8 or not, is that you get depreciation. So depreciation, once you're getting a straight solid number, 40% or better, just on your cash on cash return, then you start looking at what also bumps my return up. Now I can figure out, I can take 10% per year on depreciation. So there's a layer of value that this type of real estate investment presents. And so now I can bump up my yearly return by another 10%. And then I may or may not get appreciation. I'm going to get depreciation, period. I may get appreciation as well. So I've got layered value, multiple types of value that I can get on the property. And that fits in with point number 4 for them. All right. So point number 5 was avoid properties that have high operating costs. And certainly what we do in the Section 8 market, or as I love to refer to it, the guaranteed rent market, because that's really, that makes it a lot more palatable for a lot of people. But we look at it as this is really what it is. The government calls it Section 8. We call it the guaranteed rent market because that's why we're in it. Our rents are guaranteed. So when I'm looking at that, I want to look at avoiding high operating costs. So what do I have? I have to figure in my management fee because we do not manage these properties. We are not going to. We will spank you if we find out that you're doing it. Don't do that. So we have management. We pull off a percentage of the rent every month to go into a maintenance pool so that when things happen, because if you own rental property somewhere, sometime, you're going to have to replace a water heater, HVAC, roof, something. It just happens with age on any piece of real estate. So if I'm building up a pool of funds for that property, or if I have multiple properties, to be able to do that with, when it hits, it's not a shock. So now I include that into my operating cost, and we also build in a vacancy factor. Now, for most of the country, it's 6 or 7%, and you may be 100% occupied always, but if that tenant moves, you're going to have a little downtime. It may be 2 weeks, maybe 30 days, maybe 40. You're going to have a little bit of downtime. But if I've calculated in my downtime based on vacancy, then again, I've got funds set aside to cover me through that process. So I want to consider multiple layers of profit, and then I want to stay away from anything that gets out of the ordinary when I'm looking at operating costs. Those things we just talked about are very ordinary. Now, the last point,
let's not forget property tax and insurance.
Insurance, yeah,
that as well.
So the last point is the point I really disagreed with the thought, and you'll get a kick out of this when you hear what it is. Don't get lost looking for high yields. I'm like, so what it says, the temptation is for many investors to look for a high yield. When you start looking for 8% or more in today's market, you're going to be chasing a yield. And I'm just howling. And I'm like, I would love to talk to this guy, because this guy would flip out when we show him the kind of yields that we get on a yearly basis, cash on cash. And we're not even talking about, we have other strategies where we are fully leveraged. And when you're fully leveraged, 40% doesn't even begin to touch the floor. When you're fully leveraged, the number gets, they get stupid looking. They just get to be, wow. That's why we teach you, we ease you into the understanding of, can you get 200% and 300% a year, every year, year in, year out? And most people say, no, impossible, unless you're in Bitcoin or something. No, you can do this, and you can do it predictably with real estate if you learn the guaranteed rent formulas. And so that's what Kevin and I teach. That's the main focus of what we do. Do we do everything else? Yes. Do we do commercial property? Yes. Do we do multifamily apartment buildings? Yes. Do we do flips and rehabs? Yes, 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 and yes. But the main focus is building wealth, and guaranteed rent is, I think, the greatest way in America today, and the most accessible way for you and I as average Americans to be able to build wealth.
And I want to point something else out too. This strategy that we're talking about is more or less a passive strategy. This is your money working for you. Once you've invested in these properties, and once you find a good, solid, reliable property manager who's going to take care of the property the way they're supposed to, this is a set it and forget it strategy. Okay. All you need to do is keep looking for money to feed this strategy so you can buy additional properties, and look for the properties that you're going to buy to put into this type of strategy. Now, I focus on just a few cities. Section 8 is great in a lot of different places. Okay. I focus on a few cities because I'm already established there. I already have property managers. I already have people that I work with. I already have things that are set up. So a lot of people say, well, what about such and such city? You don't invest there. It's not because it's not a good strategy. It's not because it's not good. It's because I already have a foundation in these particular markets where I am, which is why I continue to invest there. And I recommend the same thing. Don't go chasing over 1 or 2 properties here, 1 or 2 properties there, 1 or 2 properties there. Find a good market and commit to it, because if you find a good property management, I'd rather have them managing 20 properties in the same city than two properties there, and having another property management company in another city managing 2 properties there, and 10 different property management companies in 10 different cities, each managing 2 properties. Once you find your fit, stick with it, set up a foundation, set up a history, and love it. I love the cities that I go to. Believe it or not, Syracuse. I like going to Syracuse. I've got my fun favorite places. There's a martini bar downtown that I love in Syracuse. There's my fun favorite places, things to do outside of Rochester. Actually, I don't do so much in Rochester, but beautiful, beautiful area. I love hiking and sightseeing in Rochester. Lots of rivers, lots of lakes, beautiful area. Buffalo, New York. I love going across the river to Niagara Falls and into Canada when I'm in Buffalo. Buffalo is a 2-hour drive from Cleveland, which is one of my favorite places to invest, not because of the benefits of Cleveland. Cleveland's a great place to invest, but I grew up just south of Cleveland. So when I go back to Cleveland, I'm seeing family, I'm seeing friends, I'm going home. So find things that have an attachment for you so that you're having reasons to go there, look at properties, buy properties,
Yep.
continue to do well. Now we're over again as always, but
Yay.
good topics. Let's come back around full circle. And we say this all the time: due diligence, do your numbers. If the numbers work, do the deal. If the numbers don't work, don't do the deal. But it is all about due diligence. Technically, due diligence is your research. Okay. And knowing your numbers is part of that research. Knowing the market you want to invest in is also going to be part of that due diligence, and knowing the strategy that you want to invest in is part of that due diligence. And once you have those things together, you can put your numbers together and you can find deals that work for you. Anything to add, Bill?
No, I was just going to touch base, right? So you mentioned due diligence. The other one was look for assets that perform well in tough times. Look for assets that have multiple layers of profitability in them. Avoid properties that have extraordinarily high operating costs or non-normal operating costs. And then look for that great rate of return. If you do those things, you're going to have a very successful investing career. You're going to be very happy with it, and you're going to make a whole lot of money. And you're going to build wealth, and not just, I'd much rather be wealthy than rich.
Let your money work for you. You don't want to be working for the rest of your life for money. Let your money work for you. Thanks, Bill. I will see you soon.
As always, brother.
Take care.
See you, everybody.